Welcome to our updated video series on the path to Nibbana. This is part 6, how the mind works. And we will also discuss about the 5 aggregates. So our mission is to attain Nibbana. And what this means is training our mind to see things as they truly are. We talked about the 4 stages, and then we talked about step 1, which is learning to be the best person you can be. And step 2 is to train our mind to be the best tool it can be. Then we went on to step 3 and talked about the body. So today we will be talking about the mind and how does our mind work. In the Buddhist teaching, there are 7 volumes describing the functions of the mind. The study is called Abhidhamma. But all we need are a few basic facts. So this is the first fact. When in our mind a thought will come, stay for a fraction of a second, and then it will disappear. And then a new thought will come. Another word for thought is sita. So we can learn 3 things. We can only have one thought at a time, and they are constantly changing, and there is nothing permanent in our mind. The very first thought while we are still in the womb is called the pratisandhi sita. Then when we are at rest, those thoughts are called bhavanga sita. And then the last thought before we die is called the chuti sita. Now, when a piece of data from the outside world is brought to our attention, let's say we see a car, or we hear a car, or we think of a car. Anytime any data comes in, the bhavanga sita is going to pause and allow this new data to come in. And this process is called a chitta vidya. Vidya means street. And each of these can have up to 17 thoughts. Each thought has many companions. And these companions are called chaitasika. And there's been 52 chaitasikas that have been described. So in red, you see the sita or a thought, and these are the companions in blue. Okay, so when we look at the 52 companions, one of them is called Vedana, which is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feelings. Another one is called Sanya, which is perception. All the other 50 are grouped together, and that's called sanskara. The best way to understand this is to imagine that they work in an office together in 2 separate rooms. In the first room, you get 2 of the chaitasikas, which is Vedana and Sanya. So that's feelings and perception, along with Vijnana, which is consciousness. Then in the other room, there's 50 of them together with a boss. And that one we can call the department of sanskara. In the department of sanskara, there's a couple of things you need to know. One of the people that are there is called Chetana, which is volition, and another person is Tanha, which is craving or desire. And then there are good deed team, and there's a bad deeds team, and then of course a whole bunch of neutral folks. Now this is a very fascinating thing I learned, which is in some people, the chaitasikas that represent the good deeds team are overactive. For example, in Dalai Lama, and in some people, the bad deed team is overactive. We could think about Hitler. Now let's see how they work together. So let's say how does the mind see a yellow rose? So the light rays from the rose will fall on the eyes, and the eye is a sense organ. That data is collected and handed over to vijnana or consciousness. And vijnana will acknowledge the receipt of this data. And then he will give it to sanya, which is perception. Now, this is a very important thing because what sanya does is he'll compare it to the existing database and identify the new data as a yellow rose. So the existing database is also, we can call it the memory. Remember this, we will be talking about this more later on. So Sanya is going to hand it over to Vedana, and he has three categories that he has to divide all the data into, which is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Now, in the next room, which is the department of sanskara, let's look at Chetana. So, Chetana is volition. Now, Chetana thinks he has a boss, and this boss is really an illusion called me. And Chetana thinks his duty is to please this boss. Now remember, this boss is really an illusion called me. So what does Chetana do? Chetana gets the data from the first office, and then he hands it over to three project managers. Now what can they do? They can either create a thought, a physical activity, or speak. Now these project managers are really new thoughts. And what do? They create new actions. And once they create new actions, those actions will give rise to new results or effects. And that in turn will create more data. Now there's two words that I'd like to bring to your attention at this time. One is the new actions that are created by the project managers. Well, they are called karma, and the new results or effects are called karma vipaka. Now we loosely call a lot of things karma, but if you really think about it, we should be calling them karma vipaka. So this new data that was created by the project managers are received by the 6 sense organs. What are they? The eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the skin. And remember, in Buddhist philosophy, the mind is considered a sense organ too. And these sense organs will send this data to Vijnana officers, but they are very specific. So the I will have a specific Vijnana officer, and it's called Chakku Vijnana, so on and so forth. And this cycle will continue. Now let's look at another member of the department of sanskara, and that would be tanha, which is craving or desire. Now let's call her a secretary. Now tanha also thinks that she has got a boss, the illusion called me. And she has two duties. She thinks one of the duties is to please the boss, and the other is to keep her boss alive forever. So what does Tanha do? Tanha will first go to Vedana and ask for all the files that are marked pleasant by Vedana. And then she will try to hold on to that. The holding on is called upadana or attachment. And then Tanha and Chetana together will go and then ask the three project managers to do new actions. This whole team, they have two missions. One is to try and help the illusionary boss called me experience more pleasant feelings, and the other is to avoid unpleasant feelings. Next, Tanha will go and talk to Vijnana or consciousness. And then she will ask Vijnana to please keep the boss alive forever. So, what happens when we die? The last piece of data created by the dying body is taken by Vijnana and handed over to the new body. Now remember, Vijnana is consciousness. Venerable Hempirigedara Jnanasingha explained this very well. He suggested that we think of a electrical wire with bulbs. So as the electricity passes through, the bulb will shine. And then when it goes to the next bulb, that will shine. So likewise, this is one life. And once that's gone, the energy or the consciousness will go to the next birth. Now, once the Vijnana goes to the next birth, what will happen is that will facilitate the growth of a new body and a new mind. And that will also facilitate the growth of the new sense organs. And these sense organs will get data and then start sending them over to the new Vijnana officers. And therefore, the cycle will continue. So, how do we stop this cycle? Well, we have to retire the boss, which is the illusion of me. Then Chetana and the other team members in the department of sanskara, well, they can retire too. And then the cycle of birth and rebirth will cease. So we learned a lot of words. One was, we talked about a yellow rose, which is an object, and it is called rupa. We'll talk more about the concept of rupa in the next slide. Then we talked about Vedana, Sanya, Sanskara, and Vijnana. So these five together are called the five aggregates or Pancha Skanda. So these are the companions to a thought. Now, let's talk a little bit about rupa. In the Sinhala language, rupa has a different meaning. In Abhidhamma, rupa has a much broader meaning. It means all outside objects, which is light, sound, smells, tastes, and touch, plus our sense organs. Now, why is that? Well, let's think for a moment that you are looking at a yellow rose. It's at that moment that you are aware of your eyes. Or let's say you hear a sound. It is at that moment that you are aware of your ears. Other times you are not really aware of your sense organs. So hence the reason rupa includes the outside objects and our own sense organs. So if you recall, when data is received by the sense organs, they are sent to vijnana and then goes to sanya and then vedana, right? Now, this process is a very temporary process. What will happen is you'll get some data, it'll go through this process and then it ends. And as you get more data, the same process starts all over again. So there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's a cycle. So therefore, we can conclude that the 5 aggregates or Pancha Skanda are impermanent or transient and are constantly changing. So, what is the final conclusion we can make? Well, all processes that we discussed in our mind are not permanent and that they are constantly changing. So, at the beginning of the video, we talked about how we will learn about a concept, and then we will learn how to observe our mind to confirm whether what you learned was accurate. And then if you concluded that it was accurate, you keep repeating the contemplation until your mind takes on and get trained to see this concept as a normal thing. So in our next video, that's what we will talk about, which is how to observe your mind to confirm these concepts we learned. So a gentle reminder, please stay humble, and that's the only way you will keep learning. Help and nurture each other. Please take a moment to join our mailing list, like and subscribe to this channel, and most importantly, please take a moment to share this with like-minded friends. All of the books that has helped me, you could find free links at this website. And for this particular topic, there's a book by Dr. Mendes that I strongly recommend. So, in our next video, we'll be talking about how we are going to actually observe our mind to confirm what we learned today. Thank you so much for listening. Hope to see you soon.